Hi, family. Welcome to Melanin Culture from the Couch, episode 2, where we will be discussing hot and trending topics. On this particular episode, we will be discussing the DEI movement, or lack thereof, and all the rollbacks and then rollback forwards and all the things DEI. We will be sharing our thoughts, perspectives, opinions, and looking at what is this and what are the outcomes, what are we looking for as a people, and how do some of these decisions affect us or how do they not. So stay tuned and join in the conversation. If you have something to say, please feel free, comment, share, like, or subscribe. We're so glad you're here, family. Hey, Jordan.
Hey, what's going on?
So episode number 2, we are talking about the DEI. For all the people who are coming in and joining us, I guess, should we give maybe a little bit of a definition of what exactly DEI even is?
To the best of my knowledge, right? And you correct me if I'm wrong. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Am I saying that right?
Yes, you got it.
Okay. I think. Well, I'll start by saying this. And I think this is the problem. A lot of people, the way they see it too, is that it's kind of become almost like the new affirmative action or something, where it's like people are trying to make it appear to be a black and white thing, like as far as like a race thing. But when you really look at the research behind it, it's so much broader than anything regarding race. Like, it's people with disabilities, it's pregnancy, it's mothers who are nursing, right? It's so many different things that it's meant to help and include people on, that it's unfortunate that it's being kind of like weaponized, right? As something as race. And I think it was used as a political thing, right? Well, not that I think. It's been used as a political thing to try and sway people's mindsets to vote one way or another, or to kind of feel like, well, I'm being left out probably because of this, or I didn't get this job because of this, or I'm not. But when you really look at the research, it has nothing to do with that. But you know, that's the kind of like the times we're living in.
Okay, so but let's talk about this, right? Because I feel like there's so many different policies, including the DEI policy, where we say that we're doing this thing, but are we saying that we're doing this thing and we're actually doing this thing? Or are we saying we're doing this thing just so that we can like hush hush their people? Look, we have DEI. We have
Mhm.
DEI. Look, we have diversity, equity, and inclusion. But then when
Yeah.
it actually comes down to it, right, like of walking the walk, I wonder if these companies like Target and Walmart, even when they had these things in place, if they were even really accurately utilizing them, right?
Yeah, like
Because
kind of like, yeah, like almost like who are they reporting to, and like who held them accountable, right?
let's be honest here, if we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion program and we have a white man in charge of it, please tell me,
Right? Who does that benefit?
right? I mean, the people in charge of overseeing these policies, are they even people who are actually working towards moving the initiatives forward? I mean, I think there's so many questions that I personally have about these things that when it really comes down to it, I think sometimes as people, we say that we want all of these things, but when it comes, like when we actually look at the numbers and the statistics, the research, just because companies have DEI doesn't necessarily equate to actual diversity, equity, and inclusion.
And I kind of feel like too, though, the other side, I feel like if it wasn't effective or if it wasn't producing, then why attack it?
Well, there's that too. You're right. Why take it away if it wasn't actually working?
Mhm.
You're right. Because for that, you could have just left it and let it do nothing like it was doing before. But then I also wonder, though, Jordan, is it a way to say, hey, we're making a statement?
Oh yeah, that too. It's also like like I said, like a political platform, like something you kind of use to rile people up, and yeah, we're going
Yeah.
to get rid of that, and we don't need this, and this is taken away from us.
Yeah. But I mean, when we look over the past few years, right, at so many things that have been rolled back that were initially put in place to produce equity, right? Even like Roe versus Wade and opportunities and all these different things of autonomy. And I can't help but feel that as people, as Black people, I don't think we realize our power,
Hmm.
right? And what I'm really talking about here is what do these companies and people really care about? What's their bottom line?
Profit.
And believe it or not, we got the spending power, right? We have the spending power. And I'm glad that people are starting to see that and awaken to that, that they need to be really mindful about where they're spending their money. But how do we sustain that, right? Because unfortunately, I think because of our history, we have bought the drug of capitalism, like
Yeah.
unfortunately, right? Which is why
Yeah.
we need all these Jordans and we need the nicest car and we need to have our nails and our hair and all these things, right? But I don't know. What's your perspective on that, Jordan?
Oh man, this is interesting. We're about to go like down a rabbit hole a little bit with this one, but so let me kind of like I'll start here, right? When I was in grad school, I did a research paper, right? And we had to
Mhm.
do the goal was, and I probably went kind of far left on my assignment a little bit, but like we were supposed to interview somebody over the age of 65 or something like that. It's like a geriatric type assignment, right? Anyway, at first I was like, man, this is gonna be like I didn't know what to expect. But I was like, man, I gotta find somebody to write this one who I can spend this much time. Like you're talking about like a 10-page, 12-page assignment. Like it was very
Wow.
lengthy. Like I had a lot of questions. So I ended up going with my wife's grandfather because I was like, well, that's the only person I know personally that's older that I would be okay spending that much time with. And it actually
Hmm.
became like this really big learning experience because he's from originally from born and like raised in like Georgia, but they relocated to South Florida. So he had a lot of different takes because now fast forward, he's what, 80 something years old. So he's born, I believe, in 1930 or 1940, I believe
Wow.
it was. Anyway,
Hmm.
like he talked about pretty much pre-segregation and
Yeah.
post-segregation. And know this may be controversial. I'm gonna say it anyway because
Just say
he
it.
said I didn't. He said I didn't say it. He basically told me that black people, we were better off before and during segregation, before segregation, and he gave me legitimate reasons why and everything. I'm gonna break
Hold
it down.
on. You know that's gonna cuss a lot of people gonna be cussing us out in the comments.
Right.
That's controversial, Jordan.
Yeah, and I'm gonna explain why. Basically, the overall concept what I saw was this though. The black dollar was circulating in our own neighborhoods and our own communities, down to the bank, down to the grocery store, to I don't say the blacksmith, you name it. Like it was in our communities, right? The stores, think about it, your daily needs, your daily whatever you need to survive or thrive in community, even in your schools, right? So what happens was this is how he explained it. This is his perspective. Somebody lived through those times. When that ended, you saw people come in that were not black and take advantage of, guess what? The land, the property, the businesses, because we were doing enough to survive, but we weren't quite at that space where these people are millionaires and just could write their own checks just yet. People are just they're entrepreneurs, business owners are just trying to make it, and who knows, maybe in several years from now, generation after generation, it takes off and it's something more, it can advance it, but it wasn't given that time to do so just yet because it was still very new, right? Well, when somebody comes in and offers you maybe a lump sum that's more than what you've seen, and short term it sounds great, but long term, what does that do? now you're taking away money or opportunity for generations to come, right? And now we don't have that solidarity anymore because now we're being kind of, in other words, to kind of say kind of divide and conquer a little bit, right? So that's what I that's what that's what I learned about what is common. I thought about it more. I was like, how could you say that? But then when I really started to think about it, it made a lot of sense because now what you see on the other side is that people who had businesses of other cultures, other backgrounds, who've had the time to kind of like work these things out, pass them down to families and things like that for hundreds of years, right? And who also had opportunity to have land, right, and pass down. That's where the wealth and sort of the power of the dollar has always come from. It's kind of like land and opportunity. And when you look at our race and our culture, we haven't had that opportunity.
But that's just it, Jordan, right? How do we create that for our people? And I'm so glad you brought that up because I think this is even a bigger conversation and it is happening. I think as people, we need to understand as the diaspora, and by that I mean like the African diaspora, all of the Black people around the world, are we not learning from our history, right? And when I say that, I mean the history of all the Black people, right? So, for example, it's so interesting you bring this up. Right now in Jamaica, the man who owns Sandals, which ding, ding, ding happens to be a white man, right? The Sandals Resort,
Mhm.
he just purchased Blue Lagoon in Jamaica, which is one of
And
Jamaica's it's a natural occurring phenomenal beautiful piece of land and like a natural hot like spring, all these different things. And this man came in and purchased it based on colonial laws that still exist in Jamaica that help keep the people down. So now
it's
this part of the country that is supposed to be for the people has now been purchased by this entity.
mhm.
So what does that mean for the people, right? So now that means all the kids who grew up going there now have to pay to go to something that is naturally occurring, right? And you hear this all throughout the world of like, how do we as Black people take back our own power? How do we try our best to preserve what we have and not allow outside people to come in, rob and take what we have? And I think this is going to really be the challenge, and I'm so glad that like this is where the conversation is going, because I think this is just like the opening, because there's
Right.
so many more examples that we can talk about this, right? And I think this is really what our podcast is about as Black people, how do we help ourselves move forward? How do we use our knowledge and our wisdom and all the expertise that we have as a people to help our communities, right? And so that these things that happened in the past, that we can take the good things, like, it's so interesting, Jordan. There's this video of this young guy. He's in New York and he's doing an interview with this little kid, mind you. She's like a teenager, maybe even younger. And he's asking her, like, why do you think Black people can't move forward? And do you know what she said? She said, because we don't own nothing in our own hood. Can you imagine? This is a kid. And her observation is, this is my hood and we don't own nothing here. None of these buildings, none of these businesses are owned by us, but we spend all our money here.
We're having this conversation like, about Target, Costco, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's. And it's just like when I think about it, like, everybody's up in arms about it, but it's like the people that are kind of frustrated or disappointed, we don't own it. We don't own it. So why are we upset with people who don't look like us, who don't relate, who don't care about other than us spending our dollars, right? And it's just one of the things like that. That's why I kind of went back to that story about like the ownership and like land and property and things like that because there's so many layers to it. right? Yeah, they say we got the power of the dollar, things like that. But, it would take so much of the shift, like that's down to some basics of taking that dollar and really circulating within ourselves and creating our own for ourselves, so that when these topics come up, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter because it's like, well, we own our own, we have some say in this, but I think that's the bigger issue. It's just that why do we even need DEI? It's because the ownership is not there.
I'm about to be a nerd for a minute, but I promise you it's going to make sense.
Hmm.
So earlier, or actually in the introduction episode, I mentioned that I'm really into learning about the structure of nature, because within nature, we can learn so much about ourselves and our systems, right? So this is fascinating to me. And again, forgive me, y'all got to bear with me because I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to this. So there's a root system. It's actually a fungi. It's called the mycorrhizal root fungi, right? And so
Hmm.
essentially it's the fungi, the webbing that happens underneath the soil of trees. So
Hmm.
they used to think back in the day that trees were kind of like individual systems, right? Like each tree was its own system. Jordan, that's not true. Come to find out now, years later, that trees talk to each other in the forest
Mm.
through the mycorrhizal fungi underneath the
Mm.
soil. But listen to this. If we have a fir tree and a fir tree and then a different species of tree, guess who takes care of who first? The like trees will supplement to the like trees first. Then
Okay.
they will take care of the other trees.
Mm.
Why can't we get this as people?
Yeah.
Nature understands it. And it's not to say we can't help or support or be there for other people, but we got to do it for ourselves first, right? Like that's the part I think is like, how are we first taking care of ourselves? And if we look at nature, if nature does this instinctually, is that maybe not what we should be doing too? Well, Jordan, I am looking forward because I feel like there's so much more for us to talk about along this topic,
Definitely, definitely.
right? And so, family, we really appreciate you guys tuning in and watching and listening. And if you have anything to say, please go ahead, comment. Tell us what you think about this topic. Tell us if we missed something. Tell us if you want to add something or if you want to correct something. We are looking forward to your comments. Please like, share, subscribe. You can find us on Spotify, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We love you, family. Peace, love, and melanin.
Peace.